Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. This time we're heading out to a planet that's been really capturing the imaginations of, well, kind of everyone who's into space, Kepler 22b.
Ah, Kepler 22b, yeah.
It's a planet way out there, like 635 light years away, orbiting a star pretty similar to our own sun.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating.
And the really cool part,
Well, there's a lot of cool stuff.
it might have liquid water.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Imagine that, a whole planet with oceans and lakes and maybe even like waterfalls.
Could you imagine?
But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's see what we actually know about this place.
Right.
We've got some awesome sources for this deep dive, some real hard science stuff,
Always gotta have the facts.
and a fictional story about an explorer who's actually trying to land on Kepler 22b.
So, a good mix of fact and fiction.
The best of both worlds.
Exactly.
So what's the first thing that jumps out about Kepler 22b?
Well, right off the bat, Kepler 22b is right smack in the habitable zone of its star. That's pretty significant.
Okay, hold on. Habitable zone. What does that even mean? For those of us who, don't have a PhD in astrophysics.
Sure, sure. Think of it like this. You're sitting around a campfire. You want that sweet spot, right? Not too hot, not too cold. The habitable zone is kind of like that, but for planets. It's the area around a star where the temperature is just right, Goldilocks style, so liquid water could exist on the planet's surface.
So like not frozen solid and not boiling away.
Precisely. And of course, water is essential for life as we know it.
Right. Makes sense. So Kepler 22b is sitting pretty in this Goldilocks zone. That's awesome. But the thing is, it's so far away.
Yeah, that's a bit of a problem, isn't it?
Our explorer in the story actually uses a warp drive to get there, which sounds super cool. But like, is that even something that could actually happen? Warp drives, I mean.
Well, as much as we all love a good warp speed jump, that's still firmly in the realm of science fiction, at least for now.
So no zipping around the galaxy just yet?
Not quite. The idea behind a warp drive is to bend space-time itself, which is, pretty wild stuff.
Yeah. My brain hurts just thinking about it.
But the technology to do that is, let's just say it's a long way off.
Okay, so if we can't warp over there, how do scientists even find these planets in the first place? It's not like they can just look through a telescope and be like, oh, there's Kepler 22b.
Yeah, if only it were that easy. They actually use some pretty ingenious methods to find these distant worlds. One of the most common is called the transit method.
Transit method, okay. Lay it on me.
Picture this. You're watching a streetlight at night, and someone walks by. You'll see the light dim slightly, right?
Yeah, totally.
Well, it's kind of like that with planets. When a planet passes in front of its star, from our perspective, it blocks a tiny bit of the star's light, and scientists use these super powerful telescopes to detect these tiny dips in brightness. That's how they figure out a planet is there. They can even tell how big the planet is and how long it takes to orbit its star based on how much the light dims and how often it happens.
Wow, that's some serious cosmic detective work. So that's how they found Kepler 22b with this transit method. But what else do we know about it, besides it being in the habitable zone?
Well, one of the key things we've learned is that Kepler 22b is a super-Earth, which basically means it's bigger and heavier than our own planet.
Our explorer actually has some trouble with that in the story. It's like super hard to walk around because the gravity is so strong.
Yeah, that's a great point. It really illustrates how different a super-Earth would be. The gravity on a planet like Kepler 22b would be significantly stronger than what we're used to.
So no moonwalking on Kepler 22b. Got it.
Probably not. But there's another interesting implication of that size. Scientists think super-Earths tend to have very thick atmospheres, which leads to some really intriguing questions about the water on Kepler 22b.
Okay, so we've got a bigger planet, stronger gravity. What's so different about water on a super-Earth?
Well, we know it's in the habitable zone, right? So the temperature could be right for liquid water. But because of the intense pressure from that thick atmosphere, the water might not act quite like we'd expect. It could be what's called supercritical.
Supercritical, huh? Sounds serious. What's that?
Think of it this way. Imagine water that's so hot and under so much pressure that it's not really a liquid or a gas, but something in between. It's both at the same time. Scientists are still trying to figure out what a supercritical ocean would be like and whether it could support life.
Whoa, that's pretty mind-blowing. So we've got this potential super-Earth with maybe like this crazy water stuff on it. What about the air? Our explorer, they seem to have a bit of an issue with the atmosphere too.
Yeah, the atmosphere is another big mystery. In the story, the explorer finds lots of hydrogen and helium, which makes sense for a large planet.
Right.
But here's the kicker. There's no oxygen.
Yeah, that's not going to work for us humans, is it? No
Uh,
oxygen, no breathing.
nope. And beyond just the lack of oxygen, we really don't know what else is in that atmosphere. Is the pressure too high? Are there any toxic gases?
Well, from what I'm reading, our explorer definitely finds out the hard way. But I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who wants to check out the story themselves. It's safe to say, though, it's a pretty stark reminder that space exploration is not exactly a walk in the park.
Definitely. This story highlights the importance of really understanding a planet's environment before sending humans there.
Speaking of which, we've touched on the atmosphere, the maybe water, maybe not water situation. What about life? Does our explorer find any aliens swimming around in that supercritical whatever it is?
Well, that's where things get even more intriguing, and we'll dive into that right
Right
after.
after the break.
Yeah. So to answer your question, in our story, the explorer doesn't actually find any, like, obvious life forms.
Oh, man. I was kind of hoping for at least some glow-in-the-dark jellyfish or something cool like that.
Right. But this actually brings up a really interesting point. What are we even expecting when we talk about alien life?
Good question.
We tend to think of it in terms of what we know, right? Like animals or plants that we see here on Earth.
Yeah, makes sense.
But what if life on Kepler 22b is totally different, like so different we wouldn't even recognize it?
You're saying aliens might not look like aliens at all.
Exactly. Maybe it's not even carbon-based like life on Earth. Or maybe it's microscopic, so tiny we just completely miss it. I mean, think about it. We've only recently discovered how incredibly diverse microbial life is here on Earth, and we're just scratching the surface.
So like alien bacteria.
Could be. Or something even weirder that we haven't even imagined yet.
Okay, so how do we even look for these tiny alien microbes on a planet that's like hundreds of light years away?
Well, one way is to look at the planet's atmosphere. Certain gases, like methane or oxygen, could be signs of biological activity. They're called biomarkers.
Biomarkers, okay.
Like, detectives use fingerprints, scientists use biomarkers to try and find clues of life.
Uh-huh, space fingerprints. Got it.
Uh,
So any luck finding those on Kepler 22b?
Not yet. But future telescopes, like the James Webb Space Telescope, those will be sensitive enough to maybe pick up on even the faintest traces of these gases. So fingers crossed for some exciting discoveries down the line.
Exciting is right. It feels like we're on the cusp of some major breakthroughs in exoplanet research, doesn't it?
Definitely feels that way.
Okay, but back to our explorer for a sec. They really went through it, huh? The crazy gravity, no air to breathe, and that's just for starters. It
Yeah.
really drives home how challenging and dangerous space exploration can be.
Oh, absolutely. If we ever want to send humans to Kepler 22b, we need some major leaps in technology.
Like next level stuff.
Yeah. We're talking about figuring out how to protect astronauts from radiation, maybe even create artificial gravity. It's a huge undertaking.
And even if we could figure all that out, wouldn't we have to think about the ethics of it all? Like, what if we accidentally contaminate their ecosystem with our microbes?
That's a crucial point. What if we harm life forms that we haven't even discovered yet?
Yeah, that would be a disaster.
Right. It's something scientists are actively discussing and debating. If we find evidence of life on Kepler 22b, even just tiny microbes, we'd need to have strict protocols in place to make sure we don't interfere.
It's a tough balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
We want to find life out there, but we also have a responsibility to be careful and respectful. It's not just about us.
It's about recognizing that we're part of something much, much bigger than ourselves, and we need to act accordingly.
Okay, so to wrap up this part of our deep dive, it seems like Kepler 22b is full of possibilities, but it's still a big mystery. We got these hints of a super Earth, maybe some strange form of water, maybe even some kind of life. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and it reminds us that there's still so much out there that we don't know, so much left to explore and discover.
This deep dive has definitely been an eye-opener for me. What else could you tell us about Kepler 22b?
I think one of the most important things to consider is what studying these exoplanets, like Kepler 22b, can teach us about our own planet and the nature of life itself.
That's interesting. It's funny. At the beginning, we were talking about like packing our swimsuits for Kepler 22b. But now I'm realizing that exploring these exoplanets is so much bigger than just finding a cool place to visit in space.
It really is. Studying a planet like Kepler 22b, for example, can actually help us understand our own planet better. Kepler 22b, it's a super Earth, right? Bigger and heavier than our planet.
Right, yeah. But how does that connect back to Earth?
Well, by studying how super Earths form and how they change over time, scientists can actually get clues about how our planet formed billions of years ago. It's kind of like looking at a bigger, older version of Earth.
So it's like a family reunion, but for planets.
Exactly. And by understanding those early stages, we might be able to answer some really big questions about how life even started on Earth. It's pretty amazing.
That's really cool. So big picture stuff. But what about like practical applications? Can we learn anything from Kepler 22b that can help us with problems here on Earth?
Absolutely. We were talking about the atmosphere on Kepler 22b earlier, right? It could be very different from ours. But by studying what it's made of and how it affects the climate on that planet, we can learn a lot about atmospheres in general.
So Kepler 22b is like a giant lab for studying atmospheres.
You could say that, and that knowledge could be super helpful for tackling things like climate change here on Earth. If we can understand how different things affect a planet's climate, then we can make better predictions for our own planet's future.
This is wild. It's amazing to think that a planet hundreds of light years away could help us solve problems here at home.
It really highlights how connected everything is in the universe. What happens out there affects what happens here, and vice versa.
So are there any missions in the works to actually send a spacecraft to Kepler 22b? Get a closer look.
Well, as we talked about, interstellar travel is still a massive challenge. It's not easy to just hop over to another star system.
Yeah, no warp drives yet.
Exactly. But technology is constantly advancing, right? Who knows what the future holds? Maybe one day we'll be able to get firsthand data from Kepler 22b. Maybe we'll even send astronauts there.
That would be incredible.
It would be.
Well, this deep dive has definitely been mind-blowing. I've learned so much about exoplanet research and why it's so important. It's not just about finding aliens. It's about understanding our place in the universe and using that knowledge to help protect our own planet.
Exactly. And hopefully it'll inspire more people to get curious about space and explore what's out there.
You never know. Maybe someone listening right now will be the first person to walk on Kepler 22b. That'd be an amazing story.
Definitely would.
Well, thanks for taking us on this deep dive. It's been a truly awesome journey. Kepler 22b, a planet full of possibilities.
It's been a pleasure. Keep looking up and never stop exploring the universe.